Welcome to Watching the Throne.
A lyrical analysis of Kanye West.
My name is Chris Lambert.
And my name is Travis Bean, and I just lied, because this isn't a lyrical analysis of Kanye West. This is a visual analysis
Oh
of
my
Kanye
God.
West.
I see what you did there. That's beautiful.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about, this was a listener suggestion, that we cover the All Day / I Feel Like That music video, which I think a lot of people might think, like, what's there to cover? And we would tell you, in typical Watching the Throne fashion, everything.
Yeah, everything too much and never too little.
Yeah. Seemingly simple music video of Kanye just in this room by himself. There's just so much going on, the song itself, and like how he's playing off the song and the energies of the song and the themes of the song and why he combined those songs together. Like, it's all there for the taking.
Yeah, and it kind of is a good visual representation of what Kanye would go on to do with a couple of his albums.
Yeah, sure. Like in what way? Like just the dual.
Yeah, the duality. So you have All Day, and I Feel Like That, and the general dichotomy between them, or the juxtaposition between them, in that All Day is such a hyped up, high energy song, where I Feel Like That is very repetitive and like a very emotional, talking about like the anxiety that you feel and listing off symptoms of anxiety. And to go from the one that's like very much music to go to the other that's very much like avant-garde, scientific reading of descriptions with just this emotive I Feel Like That being sung almost desperately over and over again, and having those two compete. Like, this was in the period where he was trying to put together what would go on to become The Life of Pablo. And what we see on The Life of Pablo right there on the album cover is that dichotomy between which one, like the big booty model or the family at the wedding, which is two very different lifestyles. And you see that dichotomy play out over the track list on the front half of The Life of Pablo up to Silver Surfer intermission, where it's mostly a high energy song like, whatchamacallit, Father Stretch My Hands Part 1, followed by a low energy song like Father Stretch My Hands Part 2. Then you get Famous, and then Feedback. Then you get Highlights, followed by
Freestyle 4.
Freestyle 4, yeah.
Yeah.
And you just get this beauty with this ugly. And he first showed that off with All Day and I Feel Like That. Like this high energy followed by this lower energy. This something that's more ego followed by something that's more vulnerable. I guess he was doing it on Yeezus too.
Well, he was, but I think with Yeezus, it was. I think what you're getting at is like he made it more clear. Like, it's more chaotic on The Life of Pablo. Like, a lot of people's complaint about The Life of Pablo is it sounds messy, and it kind of sounds messy on purpose. Like, people say that's disorganized, but really it ends up having a flow because of that, because you're being pulled in and pulled out of these mindsets. And I think on Yeezus and like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, like, things are just a little more cohesive. Like, songs kind of like pull in and out of each other naturally more, and there's just like and by default it ends up having this kind of cohesive sound throughout. And I think what we start to see is like what you're describing with All Day and I Feel Like That, like polar opposite sounds, polar opposite emotions being shoved together on purpose. Like, people say like there's no way Kanye meant to do that on Life of Pablo. Then why the hell is he combining All Day and I Feel Like That? He's trying to aggressively point out the different components of human beings, and knowing he would go on to discuss being bipolar on Yay, like these two songs being put together really seem to capture that. In transition, the video captures that too, because it goes from high energy to downtrodden low energy.
Yeah, like the first part of the video during All Day, Kanye's running around this room, and the first part he's aggressively pursuing the camera.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of funny.
Yeah, like, and Steve McQueen's like kind of trying to avoid Kanye, and Kanye's like, no, look at me. And then once Alan Kingdom comes in for the first time, and All Day, which is kind of this different energy to the song, the dynamic switches.
Yeah.
Suddenly the camera starts pursuing Kanye.
Yes.
And Kanye's trying to avoid it. And there's times where he like perks up, but for the most part, it's now he's the one pursued until the song reaches its outro, at which point his energy just shuts down completely and he goes over to a wall and collapses.
Yeah. I was comparing it to New Slaves and how the first part of New Slaves, Kanye is so aggressive and going after everybody. And that's kind of what All Day is. Mm-hmm. Somebody who is ready to fight and ready to prove themselves and wants to take down the man. And similarly in New Slaves, at the, after the song, he gets to a point where he's just like, oh, fuck your Hampton spouse. I came on her Hampton blouse, and he's kind of resorted to just like childish behavior because he's not getting anything accomplished and he's being defeated. He resorts to drugs and kind of like falls into a trance, and the energy just drops. To me, is kind of what's happening on All Day. All of a sudden we don't hear Kanye anymore. We just hear Theophilus, right? And Alan Kingdom.
Yeah, the loss of Theophilus.
Whatever his name is.
London. T. London.
Yeah, T. London.
Sorry. Oh my God.
But just bringing in, and at the end of New Slaves, he brings in Bon Iver and everything, and just allowing other people to kind of like dictate the mood of the song and to have that energy drop and for all of the ego to like kind of fade away. That's what we see happening in the video. Suddenly, like, Kanye went from somebody who pursued fame, pursued attention, to like, oh no, now I'm having too much. And that's exactly what we hear him talking about when he talks about being bipolar. You get ramped up like he is at TMZ, and then there are times where like, oh God, I can't handle all of this focus on me. I need to like retreat. Like what we saw happen after the St. Pablo tour. Like he went away for a whole year because he couldn't handle it.
Yeah. It's interesting how he was exploring this leading up to the breakdown, right? Like it was clearly, the dichotomy was clearly on his mind on Yeezus, even putting together Justin Vernon and Chief Keef. Mm-hmm. Like we talk about in our Yeezus season in the Yeezus book, the dichotomy in the guest features or some of the samples. Like he'll put Justin Vernon to symbolize vulnerability and then Chief Keef to symbolize ego. And he'll use Assassin to symbolize ego, and he'll use Kid Cudi for vulnerability. And he has that tension on that album as somebody that's starting to be pulled between the two paths he could walk. Ultimately, he chooses to be more vulnerable, which is why the album ends with Bound 2. But Jerome's in the House, Watch Your Mouth, still gets at that like awareness that people are looking at you and people are judging you, which is where the ego comes in, that he feels like he has to pump himself up and present himself a certain way because that's what people expect of him. Yeah. He'll go to the club and be Yeezus that's just like tearing through the club on his bodyguard's back. But that's not really who he wants to be, right? He's longing, he's hurt, he wants romance, he wants something more. And is he allowed to have it as a celebrity figure? Can he be vulnerable? And we see him begin to explore that in Yeezus, explore it in the video for All Day, I feel like that, then lead into the life of Pablo where it's the same thing, right? Like you that fame tries to make you and the you that you want to be for your family. Mm-hmm. And then that's the same thing with Ye. And it's like over the course of 5 years, he finally reached the point where he could make the statement, sometimes the most beautiful thoughts are beside the darkest. And that's what you see still somewhat in the All Day I Feel Like That video.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
One energy, this brighter energy against a darker energy.
There's so much to pick apart. Again, like people think it's crazy because it seems like such a simple video. But like even stuff as little as like him putting his hands up when it says throw your hands up and getting low when he's told to get low. Like I think a big part of that is him, a big part of the video going beyond just feeling the overwhelming pressure of being a celebrity and being his position is the role of like music in his life. Because one of the cool motifs throughout the video is you see the speakers in the background, and like at some point Steve McQueen will like try to look at the speaker, and like Kanye will jump in front, and there's like this strange looming presence of music throughout the video because he's in a big square open room.
It's like a warehouse.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like the final shot of the video, I mean, that's you know that's usually an indicator of like what a movie or a story is trying to do. Is like you pick apart the opening, you know, the intro, and the very end. And at the very end, we see the camera pull back, and all of a sudden, these speakers are surrounding Kanye, and it's like it speaks to how music is what made him as big as he is, and it's also like his comfort. Like there's something comforting about these speakers being around him, and at the same time there's something like overwhelming and constricting about it. To me, it speaks to the room itself and how in the beginning the room feels kind of like he's running around and he's got so much space, and then at the end it feels kind of constricting and that he's just like kind of stuck in this room. There's so much movement with like what the room represents and what music represents to him. I don't know, it's all just like it's like an amalgamation of ideas all coming together at once, and like you kind of feel what it's like to be in that position, to be somebody who makes music for a living, both as like a way of coping and at the same time like using it to like rev up and like get attention, and there's just so much happening with all those ideas at once.
You look even at, you talk about the first shot and the last shot, and the first shot is just a close-up of Kanye staring at the camera, and he's right in front of the camera face to face with you, and it's very focused on him there. You're tight on him, and the last shot is a super pulled back. It's the furthest zoomed out that we get in the whole video, and he looks small and reduced even though he's contained in this room, and he's smaller than the speakers now. He's smaller than the windows. It's like visually he went from dominating the frame to being just like a little piece of the whole. And there's so much to not maybe take away from that, but to discuss just in what that means for his ego and what that means for the energy levels, and that he's present at one point and then distant at another point. Is it better when you're dominating the camera, or is it better when you can have that space and you're part of something larger? Is he reduced in that moment, or is he maybe more free because it's not just the full pressure on him? I feel like that's where it starts to get a bit more subjective in how you want to take, like, what you want to take away from that dynamic. But that dynamic is clearly intentional in that you start with that super zoom and then you end with a zoom out.
Yeah. And in building off that, like thinking about how the opening shot is him, a tight frame of Kanye, and he wants to control the camera, and he wants to shake things up. He wants to get you revved up with him. He wants to get you on his level, on this high octane level. And then at the end, when I feel like that starts, we get another close-up of him, and suddenly it's a different energy. It's still a close-up, but now he's like trying to connect, and it's no longer about me. It's about like, do you feel like that? Because I do. Like, let's connect over this. Like, let's remember that like people hurt, and it's almost like, in some ways, it feels like a condemnation of like the behavior before. It's not. It just, because Kanye is on those different levels, and beauty comes out of like both those levels. But I do think it kind of reveals that there are times when there are just different connections he's always trying to make of his music. And to have like him go from angry and like grabbing you, saying like, you fucking ready for this, to like, I feel like that too, and making a genuine connection. It can't be understated that he's able to capture both of those just through performance.
Yeah.
I mean, the camera doesn't change. All that changes is Kanye.
Yeah. And you get the difference in angle too. Like the first shot is very equal. Like the camera and Kanye are on the same level. And when I feel like that starts and he collapses against the wall, the camera's just staring down at him. Mm-hmm. And now he's like visually in this reduced place because now he's below looking up at you, which just kind of increases the vulnerability and visually represents this like difference in not quite energy, but this difference in standing, where before he really wanted to try to almost intimidate the camera and impose kind of an authority over the space. And then when I feel like that, he's not trying to impose that same authority, and it does become more humanizing in a way, right?
Yeah. So yeah. Anything else about the video? We've talked almost twice as long as it is.
I think the only other thing that I would have to discuss about it, nah.
No. I love the space too. I love that Kanye has like, as somebody who's obsessed with architecture, he seems to like put a lot of value in like the setting of his videos and like his concerts. So I think being able to make this room both this vast, like kind of scary place and like something very constricting and scary, like I don't know, that's crazy.
Is it the wall? Like, is it the paint peeling?
Yeah, it's kind of like the Runaway music video. He seems to really like that aesthetic.
Oh God, if you Google, I feel like that room.
Maybe if you put Kanye.
Yeah, you get some weird things.
Ooh, we got some people celebrating outside.
Yeah, I almost wonder if like, because it looks like the paint was on it and it started to kind of peel off, fade away. Like, if with Kanye being as architecturally inclined, you could view that the setting is just the setting, or you could view that he chose the setting purposefully to kind of look at like, I don't know, the patchworkiness. It almost
Right.
feels like a visual representation of the colors dripping off.
Sure.
Like at the end of Yay. There's just something about the palette of the room that seems fitting with the dynamic that we're discussing in terms of what luster there is in All Day isn't there, and I feel like that. And
Yeah.
that he's actually not this like perfect and beautiful thing, but is also somebody that's been like stripped away in
Totally.
some sense.
I think that's 100% on purpose. But, you know, we're watching The Throne, so of course we think that.
Of course. The only other thing that I can think of is that when he says like, I feel like that all the time, it is interesting because it does seem to, if we're reading into the connection between the lyrics, if he's saying that I actually feel this anxiety all the time, then even in the part where we thought he was confident, it's arguable that that confidence is born out of anxiety or needing to prove yourself, or is it just this pure thing? But it's still complicated.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of true in all of his albums, because Yeezus starts out as like this ramped up guy who wants to control every situation he's in and wants everything on site. And really, as we learn throughout the album, it's all in an effort to like kind of mask his demons and escape everything he screwed up in his life. I kind of feel like that's just permanently an element of his songs, especially after Graduation. Like, I feel like that's what Graduation is exploring, this journey to empty celebrity life and discovering what it is. And like, then your career just becomes like masking it and pretending that everything's great on Drunken Hot Girls when like it's really fucking sad. And then he just gets better and better at expressing that.
Now you got me thinking about Amazing, and the fact that Amazing has lyrics where you're like,
I'm so amazing.
Yeah, I'm the reason everyone's fired up this evening. Like, the delivery tells us something that the lyrics don't. And it's like, if you just read the lyrics, you're like, this is a confident guy. But when you hear it, you're like, nah.
And then you hear Young Jeezy, and like they have polar opposite energies. And
yeah, and given the context of the album, this just isn't the one positive song.
Yeah.
And like an oasis of sadness. Like, it is part of that. And you're already seeing that kind of, I feel like that dynamic, or like All Day, I feel like that dynamic in Amazing.
Yeah, and as somebody who's really, a lot of his biggest influences are filmmakers, like it makes sense that he takes something that on Amazing, like while impressive, like is kind of simple, you know? like I'll take these lyrics that make me sound like big and strong and deliver them monotonally. Like, okay, like I get it. But now, like, I feel like that. Yeah, you're right. To have this warehouse that's like stripped away and to be acting like a big shot in it, and then slowly throughout the song be kind of like beat down and devolve into this like broken person who blends in with that environment. Like, it's some epic shit right there. Steve McQueen did a good job.
Steve McQueen did a fantastic job. Steve, whenever you want to come onto the podcast,
hell yeah,
we'll talk film with you.
Okay, so that was, we didn't mention it, but that was day 9?
10.
Day 10 of the Advent calendar. That's going by so fast.
It is.
I think it was the best day yet.
You know, some would say that.
I'm saying it.
Some would say it.
It was better than 1 through 9.
It's a bold claim.
We didn't take out the treat.
No, what is the treat?
It's, it's one of those Valentine hearts with a message on it.
Oh, yeah.
I want to give this to you, actually, because it expresses... It says, you my boo.
You my boo. Flip it over.
Ooh, don't read that. Don't read that. That's inappropriate for this show.
Send nudes.
Chris, come on. Kids listen to this.
Stay wavy.
And loopy.